also listed on your program. Thank you. This forum will begin shortly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Ellwood, and I want to welcome you here to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Harvard Kennedy School. This is a really special evening for us tonight because we have with us someone who is here to talk about one of the few bright spots that came from what we once called the Arab Spring and is in a position to help us think as effectively as anyone can is how we can really make these things this thing we call democracy work. Tonight we have with us the Honorable Mehdi Jomaa. I'd like to acknowledge several distinguished guests here in the audience. His Excellency's wife, Hala Jomaa, right here. Former Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Larbi, and the former Minister of Higher Education, Scientific Research, and Information and Communication Technologies, Dr. Jalasi. Let me also thank the Institute of Politics here, as well as the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, our Sub-Saharan Romani Center for Business and Government, and the Office of the University Marshal for all their work in putting this together. In 2011, when a street merchant set himself afire in January of 2011, a remarkable set of events began to transpire, starting in Tunisia, but quickly spreading across North Africa and other places. We saw a remarkable transformation. Governments began to fall. People were desperately trying and seeking to have revolutions that would result in free elections and the like. But one by one, many of these things have not turned out quite the way the original organizers had hoped. Tunisia seems, though fragile, a bright spot. And it's really fascinating to understand the story. We'll hear more about this, but it's not that in Tunisia things were always easy or went really well from the start. This was a period when, yes, there were elections, but they were highly contested. Then there was several assassinations of leftist political leaders, and there were very many times, there were calls for a government governed by Sharia law. So there were many times when this experiment felt like it could have gone the same way that some of the others have. But a variety of people came together and began to think about ways to make it really work. Our speaker tonight in 2011 was working in France, as he had been for most of 24 years. He was in the company, the Total Group, where he specialized in aeronautical systems and worked on several programs dealing in defense and aerospace. Yet he was called upon in 2011 or 2012 to be the Minister of Industry. 2012, after several challenges periods. 2013, I'm sorry, 2013. And though his family was in politics, this is something that wouldn't necessarily, I think, have occurred to you, but this was a chance to come back and work for your country. He became Minister of Industry, and he brought together a new energy strategy, an increasing mix of renewable and high value-added industrial policy. He rationalized energy subsidies and culture change and social responsibility in large industrial groups in Tunisia. Then early in 2013, when the country was thrown into crisis, he again was quite involved in putting the pieces together. And in January 2014, after several months of acute political crisis, which stalled the transition process, he was selected by the National Dialogue Committee to become the head of government and to serve as the interim prime minister until the next election. He was charged with completing the transition process with the ultimate objective of organizing the country's first general elections under the new constitution. During his tenure in office, he restructured and enhanced the security apparatus to deal with terrorism. He launched a national economic dialogue to build a national consensus around priority fiscal and structural reforms, organized a major investment conference entitled Invest in Tunisia. He introduced an innovative governance procedure based on a trilogy of vision, strategy, and leadership. And in December of 2014, the first truly free and fair presidential election since 1956 happened in Tunisia, and he is no longer the prime minister as of February 6th. It is exactly what many reformers might have dreamed of. Not surprisingly, he's gotten the Tunisian Order of Republic, the German Order of Merit, and the Amadeus Man of the Year distinction from Morocco. Interestingly enough, just in my chatting with him earlier, he talked also about his strategy for how he thought about governing during that period. I hope you'll talk some about that, and if you don't, I will ask you a question or two because it's a fascinating and very uncommon strategy that he proposed. So please join me in welcoming the Honorable Mehdi Jomaa.
Thank you, dear Dean, for this nice and bright introduction. Thank you, dear faculty, officials, and students, and dear guests. To all of you, good evening. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today in Harvard. Finally, I will say, because I was used to come to Boston, I think more than 15 times, and each time I was intending to visit Harvard, but never happened. And now I am here in Harvard, but not visiting the business school as a businessman, but the Kennedy School of Governance as a politician. So I'm really happy to be with you, and I thank you hosting me and giving me the opportunity to speak about our experience, about our nice country, about what I call the startup democracy. I think I was wondering which could interest such skilled and famous people and famous instant. And I remind the question of the President Obama when I have been here in the United States in a state visit. He told me what makes Tunisia succeeding in the transition process. So I will try to develop that. And maybe after, we'll try to forecast the future, how to consolidate this experience, how and then how can be benefit for the whole region. And since Dean asked me to do that, maybe I will speak about the way we set up this government to manage this difficult and turbulent period. So it's another way, another style to make politics, another style to be in the government. I will tell you about that. So first, let's start with the beginning. You know, early in January 2011, an earthquake began in Tunisia and then propagated in all the region, a revolution, and the emergency of this transition period, turbulent transition period. To remind things, this revolution occurred because there was an expectation mainly from young people, connected people, because the tool of the revolution was mainly Facebook, internet, since there was no freedom in the expression and in the media, so people used the modern modern means to do their revolution. And we can summarize the expectation in three main things. Freedom, of course, but as well looking for opportunities, since we have educated, graduated people, skilled people, and the economy was not able to generate enough opportunity, enough job for them. So they are looking for that. And then as well, it was because there is a problem in Tunisia of imbalanced development between the inner land and the coast lands. So problem, freedom, opportunities, and development. After, it was not so easy. I think at the time, it was like a dream. We succeeded to make the revolution within 4 weeks. Fantastic. Some victims, even one victim is a lot, but compared what we know in the history and in geography, it's reduced the price that we paid. And the dream was that since we succeeded the revolution, we will succeed quickly to solve all the problems. But we forget then in a revolution, you make the problems more complex because you need to reconstruct and you shake the state, you shake the structure, the existing structure, and that's what happened. And even though there is another problem that the political class was not prepared to take the place of the previous regime. And the only thing where they prepared is the human rights exercise, because they were in the opposition, they were really struggling for human rights. But after, when they came to the state, manage the state is more complex. You need that, you need the human rights, but you need to manage, you need to check problems, you need social, you need economy, you need finance, you need all of that, and they did not have the opportunity to do. So it was a really complex, a lot of crisis, security crisis as well, since there was a problem with the security staff. It was seen as the tool of the repression of the previous regime, and as well all what happened in the area with the revolution in Libya and in other countries, which has a big impact on the security in Tunisia. For the first time, we see the terrorism happening in Tunisia. We were not used with that. It's really strange for us, strange phenomena. It was linked with what happened in the region. So, social protestation, political lack, political crisis, security crisis, a lot of things to solve in the meantime. And you have the young people who made the revolution were expecting to solve the original problem, which is a jobless, and opportunities and economic and development. So that was the story. I think you know some details, and let's say that all the Tunisians were shocked by the first political assassination, and then the second, and we consumed, I think, four government within 3 years. So it was a lot, but it gives an idea about the instability that we live. And at that time, there was a big pressure on the political class to stop fighting and to gather themselves, to stay around the table and to lead a dialogue. It was done because we have a strong civil society, and among them women, which are stronger again and really present, and they exerted a big pressure on the political class to say, stop now, you have to find a solution to this issue. We did not make this revolution to get more trouble. We made this revolution to get a progress. And I think we made a progress through this approach of dialogue, approach of compromise, but as well inclusive approach. All the different parties, whatever their ideology, whatever they are, coming from the right or from the left, they stayed around the table and they found a solution, and we succeeded to vote and to adopt a constitution. We are proud of this constitution. We can tell you that with you, with everywhere, with all the free people in the world, we are sharing the same value like freedom, freedom of belief, freedom of thinking, freedom of expression, all these nice values that all the people are sharing or intending to share, and we have it. We have a secular constitution today, which was agreed by all the parties, whatever their reference, even the religious reference, and that's the frame of all the political exercise and future in Tunisia today. And we don't see people, we don't see their origin, we don't see their ideology. They are free to believe on what they want to free, but we see them through the respect of the constitution and of the law. And that's the most important thing happened in Tunisia. So after there was the election to prepare, and the dialogue pointed this government. I was in charge of this government with the main priority, which is to lead the last stage or the last step of this transition with successful, transparent, and fair elections. And hopefully we succeeded to do that. But to do that, it was important to offer the right environment. Political appeasement. We were living a big crisis, and we have to manage that. And we are supposed to be non-political. But we were aware that that period was extremely political. So, but we brought our style, a new style to manage politics. And when I hired the ministers and all the government team, there was a commitment not to belong to any party and to respect that till the end of the mission, and they did. And it was important because the first thing to do, it was to keep the same distance from each party, and they are numbers, but a positive distance. I mean, not to break with them, but to be open to them, but without any influence. And I think that we succeeded, and that's why we gave to the scene, to the landscape, we gave them the appeasement that we need. We checked as well the security problem, the terrorism, which were not a tradition in our country, but with the lack of equipment. But we worked on the motivation and in the restoring the confidence, restoring the trust between the population and the security staff, and the trust of the security staff themselves. And like in any group, the first thing is not the equipment, but the motivation. And we restored the motivation, and then we worked on the organization and coordination, and in that way, we gained the first fight against the terrorism, and we can tell you that today Tunisia is safer. When we started, we are reacting to the threats. Now we are anticipating all their operation, all their plans, and we have a good success on that. What we have to do now is to protect our house from the outside threats coming from the region, and you know how troubled is the region. But I do believe in the capability of the Tunisian state, of the Tunisian people, to do that, to succeed in that, because the population now is on the side of the security side, fighting all together against this phenomena. They took advantage from the weakness of the state after the revolution to recruit some of the people that they sent outside, to recruit some of the people. But now, since we have a good collaboration with the population, I think that's the best protection. It's more important than helicopters and other means. We need equipments, but the most important is we need the support of the population, and that's we have. And we recover our tradition, of peace, of rejecting violence in Tunisia. And believe me, that's inaugurated from 3,000 years of history in Tunisia of tolerance, openness, and open mind. Now, I think maybe about the factor of success. I told you this history, this tradition of moderation, this tradition of tolerance, of compromise, of dialogue, the strength of the civil society, but as well the level of education, which is important. In Tunisia, we chose since the first year of independence to invest in education. Third of the budget was invested in education, and only few percent in military staff. That's the truth. And we realize today how important it is, and we think that among the reforms for the future is to reform the education, to improve it, because it was successful in the past, but we have to continue. That's the best way to protect our society and to put it on the track of the progress. I think that's the main things that we have. I think we succeeded as well in this transition because we have a clear commitment. We have a roadmap which was written in clear terms, and we committed to respect this roadmap in the content and in the schedule as well, in the deadlines. We committed and we shared with all the people this target, and we worked on this target, and we were clear, and we reached this target, and it was one of the key of success. That means any commitment, any contract should be clear and shared. And when you share things, even though they need sacrifice, they need efforts, people are willing to do that, and that's the experience we have today in Tunisia. What's about the future? I think that we did not finish the transition. We finished the political transition. We have a constitution, we have now elected parliament, we have a government emerging from this elected parliament, we have elected president, we have all the institutions now which were elected in a fair and transparent way, but we have to pay attention to that. It's young. They need to be consolidated, so it's still fragile, and we don't have to make the mistake to say it's already well done. No, we have to pay attention to that. But the most important challenge for the future is to start the economic transition. I told you the aim of the revolution, freedom. Okay, we answered with the political transition. And now we have freedom. It needs to be improved. It needs to be consolidated. But we did not answer the expectation of the young people of job, employment, development. And that's why we have really to focus on the economic and social transition, which is important. Important as well to ensure the sustainability of our political system, of our young democracy. And for that, I think we need reforms. If there was a revolution, that means that the model was not the best one. Anyhow, it's not no more, at least the best one. And with my government, it was not in our commitment, in our roadmap, but when we made the diagnostic, we decided to start the reform. And we started some of the economic reforms, which was not easy. And but the people accepted. We started for the subsidies, energy subsidies, we started it. For the fiscality, we started some fiscality reforms. We started the reforms of the bank, the sector, the public banking system. And there is many other reforms that we have really to push as quick as possible, to have the courage to do that, because we need that for the future. We have to see Tunisia in the future, and that's why we drafted a vision that we presented in a conference for investment in September that we called, with the participation of many countries and all the main financial institutions. And in this vision, we gave a project for the country because we need that project to ask people to give more to the country, to give more sacrifice, to work more, harder. And, but it's a promising. We know that in Tunisia we have a big potential and we have the mean, we have the resources. You know, Tunisia has its geography and its history. When you see Tunisia, it's in a cross point of three big areas. We are belonging to Africa. We are in the North Africa. And you know how is the potentiality of Africa. We are in the Arabic countries. We are a part, our natural environment is there. But as well, we are open to Europe. When you know that 80% of our trade today is made with Europe, you know how big the knowledge and the know-how we have to deal with European. And so we could be a platform, we could be a hub for the future. We have the resources, open, we speak languages, we have everything to succeed. We don't need oil. We need just to invest in our resources, to believe in our future, and we have the means to succeed, but we have to sacrifice, to work harder than we were used for a couple of years. I think if we succeed that, we can say that we are in the right track in Tunisia, and that we will comply really fully with the aspiration of our young people. We will comply with our bright history, and we can give hope to the whole region. And you know the trouble in the region today. I was asked in some interviews whether we are a model. I don't like to say that we are a model. We will not be a model, but an example and mainly a hope. We Tunisian, the responsibility to succeed for our country, Tunisia, but we have the responsibility as well to succeed for all the region, for the young people, for their aspiration. You with us, we with you, we have the common responsibility to make this experience succeeding, because it's important for the region, it's important for the peace in the world, it's important for prosperity. And I like to say that Tunisia, it's like a startup. It's small today, it's risky, but it has a big leverage on prosperity, a leverage on democracy, a leverage on the peace. So I invite all of you to believe in it, to bet in it, and to invest in it. Thank you.
We now have time for questions. There are 4 microphones located, one here, one up here, one right here, and one right here. And I'd like to remind all those in our audience about what a good question looks like here at the Kennedy School. And that is, you begin by identifying yourself. You keep it short. It has but one thought, and it ends with a question mark. So with that, let me actually ask you a quick question to begin with and then turn it over. When you became Prime Minister, you'd you'd been involved in aerospace, you'd done crisis management and so forth. How did you select your cabinet?
So I will tell you the story. When we hire a Prime Minister in general, he's coming from a party, he has a structure, he has a staff. I was selected, I was by my own in my flat. Even my family was living in Paris. And I was wondering how to do. So I started by the beginning. I put a strategy and criteria to select them. I was aware since I was Minister of Industry and living the crisis, how complex things are. And my most important thing that I can rely on is the team that I will select, and not a party or any other organization. So it was important to do that. So I defined the profiles. It's limited team. I reduced the number of ministers. I reduced the number of advisors. The advisors in the previous government were, I think they were around something like 25, and I reduced them to 4. It's like a commandos, to tell you, a commandos team, but to select the best. And I selected them everywhere in the world. One of the criteria, I refused to select and to choose anyone that I knew before. All my ministers were unknown. And it's a different way to do politics, to organize things. I was used to that. I know that it's hard and I have to build everything from the ground. And to establish a commitment, an agreement, a contract with them, and the contract was easy. I will tell you the content of the contract. I tell them, we are in a big issue. We have a big responsibility. You will stop earning money. You will join the team. You will work hard. You will not be thanked. Maybe you will receive some bits. You are forbidden to resign. You are forbidden to quit the ship. You have to continue till the last day. And no one is allowed to resign. And that's the contracts. That's what I promised to them, and they accepted. And what is important in the profiles is for each department to check that they have the skills and the experience. Second, the personality. And then the capability to manage resources, to manage people, problems, and money, which is not common in the choice of the government. And after I selected many, more than I need, and after the most important thing is how to set up this assembly of the team and to make a consistent team. Because I know that's my square, where I have to be strong and to face all the problems. So it's objective things, and as well, I selected people who can resist to crisis, because I was aware that it's a chain of crisis that we will encounter. So it was completely another way to make another style of governance, another way to make politics. We were said apolitical. We were not politicians, but let's say that we made politics in a different way.
Great, thank you. Right here.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jomaa. My name is Daniel. I'm a first-year student here at the Kennedy School. My question is this. What was it that set Tunisia apart from the other failed revolutions, like in Libya or in Egypt, that Tunisia was able to discover democracy and a secular government?
I think the main factor is the history of Tunisia. So maybe I forget something which is important. In Tunisia, we have the tradition of law and state. You know that the first draft of constitution goes back to 1852. So it's not new. And the second thing, we have a strong notion of the state. And even during the revolution, we did not break the state, we shaked it, but we break the regime and kept the state. I think that these two major things are important, and that's our refuge. The law we have, we are used with law, we are used with constitution. It was like, let's say, an incremental improvement, and the notion of the state was very strong with Tunisian. Besides all what I said, the civil society, they are willing to the compromise, to the discussion, to the dialogue, the women, the education. And I think we share with all our neighbors some of that values, that specificity, but in the meantime, we have our own as well.
Thank you very much. Right up here.
Jay Gleason. Tunisia has had close relations with Palestine for many decades. The last two presidents, Ghannouchi and Mazourki, had very cordial relations with the democratically elected government of Hamas, but the new president seems to be much more critical of the Islamists. What do you feel will be the relation in the near future of Tunisia with Palestine, the divided Palestinian leadership? And also, what do you think the international community should be doing in the face of the rapid expansion of the settlements in the occupied territories?
Okay, I think in Tunisia we have our many traditions. Among them, we have a diplomatic tradition. And our reference is the international community and the international law. So we will keep that. With our relation, we have relation not with organizations, but we have relation with states. And so even though sometimes because we were in a transition period, there was some position which are compliant with the fundamental orientation of the diplomacy of Tunisia since a couple of decades. It's due to this instability, but today we have the same line that we got before, and our relations are very clear for the Palestine. We support the independence. We support the independence through the dialogue and through the international law and institution.
Right up here.
Thank you. My name is Iman Masmoudi. I'm a freshman in the college. I wanted to ask, you mentioned investment, and I wanted to ask where or what should Tunisia prioritize when it seeks loans or funding from outside states? So you talked about a lack of equipment for security purposes. Are there specific industries or markets that you would prioritize when seeking outside investment?
So first, Tunisia, when you see Tunisia was used, it's an open investment land. Half of the companies in Tunisia are outside of foreign investment, or partly or entirely. And since the revolution, there was a decrease of the investment due to the lack of vision and the instability, which is normal. But now, with the stability, with the stability and the visibility that we will give, I think that we will drain more and more investment. So, with regard to the law and to landscape, I mean the environment of investment, it's known. We have many companies, and the biggest investment is made by French, German, Italian companies. In the vision that we presented in September, we defined the priority or the potential sectors where we have to invest. To summarize that, what is important in Tunisia now to give job to educated people is the added value. And to make all our industry and economy, to make its evolution with more added value. And you see, like ICT, we have good engineers there, we have that, and it's easy to export. And we have many companies now that we can build all around big things. And I think that's one of the major sectors where we have so telecommunication, internet services, but healthcare as well, agro-food. We are already the first exporter of industrial goods from the south to the north of Mediterranean. It's not known. We know Tunisia more about tourism, which is important. But if you take only automotive, it's close in terms of GDP to the tourism, aerospace industry, which we have a good basis now of aerospace industry. We have all these sectors are defined, and I think what is important again in Tunisia, it's not the Tunisian market, but the availability of skilled and qualified resources, our position as a platform, as a hub for these three big areas where we have a good knowledge to work with them. And I think for all the foreign investors today, they are seeing Tunisia as an opportunity for the whole area.
Very good. Right over here.
Thank you. My name is Wright. I'm a sophomore at the college and a research assistant at the Belfer Center. So several thousand Tunisians have gone overseas to join the Islamic State, and I was wondering if you could comment on what might be the motivating factors causing so many Tunisians to join the Islamic State, how can those be addressed, and how will the country respond when these radicalized fighters return?
Okay, you know, I think there is a natural coalition against the terrorism, anywhere, any shape, any form it is. And we realize how dangerous it is for all our societies and how global it becomes today as a threat, and the answer should be global. So we have good collaboration with all the countries, neighbor countries, but all the countries, among them United States. We are facing the same threat, and really we are aware, and there is a lot of trust and confidence facing that. So we have the responsibility to face that, because we don't believe in any system offering only violence to the people. I never seen any in their speech any proposal to solve the problem of poverty, the problem of healthcare, or it's just blood, and we cannot agree. We can agree, all of us, to face that, and the coalition, whether it's technical, military, or other, I think it includes all the free people in the world and all the people who are aspiring to nice future for their people. About the fighters, the Tunisian fighters, what you know, after the revolution, there was the weakness of the state, a lack of security, because, as I told you, the staff of the security was seen as a part of the regime. And these groups took advantage from that. And they recruit people. They come and they recruit people. Some of them stayed in Tunisia, some of them immigrated to this, to the Middle East area to fight. But what I can tell you that we stopped that, because we restored the security, and we restored the control of our boundaries. And those who were recruited, they are now under stress and reduced. And I told you that the population now is in this fighting against the terrorism. But those who immigrated to Syria and Iraq were not in the same environment. The environment in Tunisia is helping to cancel this problem, to fight this problem. The environment there is to develop. But we stop it. There is no more flow of combatant. That was like that, the revolution, a lack of security, and they took advantage, but we stopped that. In Tunisia, it's safer, and we are really working hardly and in an open way with all the countries now. It was in the region, but now it's worldwide, how to deal with the fighters coming back. And it's not a Tunisian problem today, it's a worldwide problem.
Right over here.
Thank you very much. My name is Bassam Soua. I'm a Tunisian, and I'm here for a short program in Kennedy School of Government. My question is to, first of all, I would like to admit that you came in a critical situation where the country was in a difficult situation, and your job is to manage the country in a crisis. And I think you did well, and based on the priorities you set, I mean, mainly the security and the transition, the peaceful transition. But now I think we need to think about the future, the way forward. And I want to take two keywords that you mentioned in your presentation, in your speech. You mentioned reform, I think 2 or 3 times, and also you mentioned education. And I think this is the way forward. But my concern is that probably some people may say that maybe the current political situation in the country maybe doesn't allow to go for such kind of reforms. Because you know, reforms in education, this is a costly thing, and politicians mainly are concerned by short, they have short period, like 3 or 4 years or 5 years, and they're concerned by the next elections. So can they sustain the pressure from for labor union, from the civil society, to do a kind of long-term projects? And this kind of projects, they need kind of leader with a vision, and the leader with a vision for a short period of time. I think this is also something difficult. So I want to ask for your, how do you think about this?
I think I will answer in an easy way. If you don't have the courage to do, it's never enough. You never have enough time to do. And what you delay to do today, you will lose time. I think that we have to start now. 3 or 4 years or 5 years or 10 years, you know, the reforms that we started during the year, these reforms were not for our government period. The reforms are for the future. So, and we are in a new system now. We are in a system where the government could take place for 5 years, but for 5 months. And we cannot each time say, we cannot do the reforms, we have to delay, we have to put it. No, we have to take the courage and to do it right now and to start it right now. And if we don't do that, we will do it later, but harder and with less possibility, with less margin to do it in the right way. So I do believe that we have the obligation to have the courage to start.
Right up here.
Hi, I'm Aman Rizvi, a student at the college, and I worked in Tunisia last summer, and I often found that in the interior of the country, places like Al-Kaf, Qarwan, Gafsa, people still felt very much left out and excluded from the rest of the country, both politically and economically, even after the revolution that began in Sidi Bouzid. So I was wondering, sort of, what do you think Tunisia needs to do to include the interior and help the interior of the country develop?
I think the first thing to do is to be honest with people. And I think the mistake made that we promised to people just after the revolution that we will check their problems as quick as they are expecting, which is not possible. You know, we are speaking about cumulative problems of decades. And whatever we made a revolution or not, you cannot solve these problems within a couple of months. So we have to be clear with the people, to explain to them what we want to do, to give them a project, to give them a vision for the future, and to give them the right scale time. You know, we are speaking about the difference between the inland and the coast. And you don't have roads, you don't have highways, you don't have trains, you don't. And you have a state which is tired by 4 years of instability, by 4 years of political fighting, security issues, and before by 2 decades of bad management. And you think that you have the means to do what you miss it to do within 30 years, in 3 months, it's wrong. So that's why we have to start the reforms. We have to give a vision and a project to the country, to explain to the people and to give them the right scale. Okay, we have to help them, and we have the responsibility to help them socially, but we are not honest if we can tell them that next year you will have factories, roads, and trains.
Thank you. Right up here.
Good afternoon. My name is Deb, and I'm in the mid-career program here. I want to thank you so much by starting out your speech talking about the women. I was amazed that you talked about the role of the women in ushering in this change. I was so inspired, and I'd like to know what you're doing to continue to hold hands with these women to make sure that the change continues to go forward on schedule, as you had talked about how they were so practical.
I think that the women will not let us the choice. They are 60%. When you know that they are 60% now of the student at the university, how you can imagine the future of the men? I think no. Really, it's again in the tradition of the Tunisian society. And we got the chance after the independence to, with the president, Bourguiba, to make something which is a real revolution, is to put as an obligation the education of all the children, women, and I mean girls and boys. And now, when you see the situation of the men, they are everywhere in all the activities. They are in the agricultural activities, but they are in the government, they are as pilot, they are as police, and we are in this big trend because we invested in that during the last 50 years. So, and really, that's the statistics today. They are 60% in the university, 60% of women, 40% of men. So I think that the future is promising.
Right here.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Alva. I'm a master's student here at the Kennedy School. You spoke a lot about desperately needed economic reforms in the banking sector, energy subsidies, but I want to ask you about the informal economy. By some estimates, informal economy comprises 35 to 40% of Tunisia's GDP output, and these are activities that take place outside the scope of the legal structure. Mohamed Bouazizi was a fruit vendor, street vendor. He was an informal sector worker. What reforms are necessary to extend social protections, raise wages for these low-wage workers that comprise such a large portion of Tunisia's economy and are so central to the aspirations of the revolution?
Yeah, I think it's an important thing. So there is two kinds of formal economy. There is the formal economy when you speak about Bouazizi, and that's a small jobs and formal. And I think with the progress and when the state and the government has the mean, we have to enlarge the protection, and we have some programs for that to include some people with the social protection. We have now, they have, all of them, they have healthcare protection, all of them, whatever. And I think with the progress, we can enlarge the coverage. But there is the other, which is for me, criminal parallel economy, which grows a lot after the revolution, since this lack of security, since this lack of control of the borders. And we started really pushing that. We started, it will take some time, because you cannot check and solve the issues in one day. But with our government, among the reason of the control of the boundaries of the borders is as well to fight this phenomena with the big fishes and not the small guys. I think we have to emphasize on that. And for the others, it depends on the growth we will have in the economy and the means of the state. But the trend is really to integrate them and to give them the minimum of coverage. And the minimum that they have today is the healthcare.
Right here.
I'm Nizar Beneji from Tunisia. I'm a visiting scholar at the Massachusetts University of Amherst. So my question is, we have many Tunisian experts in many countries around the world. So how can we encourage them to come back and to contribute in this transition and to make this startup a success? And let's say we succeeded politically, but we have to follow, we have to succeed in other domains. Thank you.
I told you already my way to recruit these people through the world, to ask them to work hard, not to earn money. I think that you have a responsibility, all of you. If you are expecting the paradise and to prepare a comfortable place for you, it will be difficult. But if you feel that you are a part and you have a responsibility, you have to go back, even for a mission. And I think there is enough space to act. That was my case. That was the case of half of my team. All of them had good position, a bright career. You have both. You have two here. One, he was teaching and managing doyen, how to say, in a famous school in Paris, teaching in United States. When I called him, he was in United States. The second was living in Washington, working for the World Bank. And they made the choice to come, not to earn money or to have a comfortable. No, they chose to come and to live in a crisis atmosphere. And I think it's exciting. It's another source of motivation.
Right up here.
Hi, my name is Casey Gallagher-Schmitz, and I'm a sophomore at the college. My question is in regards to Tunisia's role in the African Union And going forward, what do you think your country's role should be in helping to promote government reform and economic reform in the other members of the African Union?
We are so far from the African Union or any union, and I don't believe that it's a political decision to do that. When you see how unions are built, I think that if each component of this space work to progress in the reforms, in the democracy, it will be a natural way to have more common interest, more interferences, and it will be built step by naturally. I don't think that we are able today to force the destiny by a political decision. All the experience that tried in that way failed.
Right up here, there'll be time just for 2 more questions.
Great. Hi, my name is Laura Thompson. I'm a doctoral student here, and I've been studying Tunisia for a very long time, so it's a great pleasure to be able to hear you speak. I wanted to ask specifically about the notion of freedom of religion that you, as you mentioned, is guaranteed by the Constitution. And I'm particularly interested in the great number, the unprecedented number of cases in the post-Arab Spring moment of Tunisians who were prosecuted for public order offenses for attacking the sacred. So specifically we have, for example, the very famous case of the Mehdiya atheist. The Mehdiya atheist, Ghazi Beji and Jabir Mejri.
Les athées? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
Les athées de Mehdiya. So these.
No, I would prefer that you said me that before I leave the government because blogueur athée. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm especially interested then in thinking about what this means for the guarantee of freedom of religion. Is this a different type of conception of freedom of religion, or was this just perhaps a blip or an exception that you don't imagine will be seen again?
No, really, I believe that it's an exception, and you cannot find many other examples, and it's normal, you know. 4 years ago, you have all the population in this case. Now, if you have 1 or 2 cases, we have to struggle to avoid that, but I think we are in progress. And in my belief, I think that we cannot go back. We can only progress. And that's the role of all of you when there is some cases like that, is to put the pressure. But believe me, there is no official intention to go back or to exert such a pressure. You have as well the society, and it's not because you change the text, you will change. That's why I'm saying that we have to consolidate. And when I say consolidate, is to transform the text in the behavior, even the respect of the law. Now, when you work on the street, there is a lot of infraction of the law, and we are making all the system to respect the law. But we know that it needs time to change the behavior of the people. It needs time. But the intention, the law, and the policy today is really to go ahead and to progress. And that's a way to progress, is not to allow such things without speak about and without protesting.
This will be the last question.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister.
But you made an interview to me.
Yes,
you have more questions?
I have one more
you
question.
You will add them to the interview.
My name is Nada Zohdi. I'm a student here at the Kennedy School and also editor-in-chief of the Harvard Journal of Middle East Policy. And in your speech, you mentioned the critical role that Tunisia's civil society has played in the democratic transition. So my question is, could you share with us maybe one example of a time when you or your ministers, your government, reached out to civil society to consult them if you were taking a particular decision or developing a certain policy? Could you give us an example of that collaboration?
So when we speak about civil society, among them you have the union, you have the boss organization, you have the lawyers, you have and during our exercise, we have a daily contact with them on all the problems, and even for economy. When we started the reforms, when we wanted to start the reforms, we started by organizing débat, enfin comment on appelle ça, le dialogue national, a national dialogue about the economy, and we made even the civil society participating to that. We listened to them, we knew all their position, all their proposal, then we took our decision. Of course, when you take a decision, it will not make everyone agree. It's against the decision. But it was important to listen to all the people, and they inspired us in our decision. But it was really a daily work with them. Because it's the interest as well. If you want to push in one direction, it's better to have these people with you to convince them between starting, then after to get them in the resistance.
Mehdi Jomaa, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Let us hope your startup democracy becomes a very powerful, long-term, major company, as it were. So congratulations to you. Thank you very much for being here. Have a safe evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Alex, would you like? Around priority fiscal and structural reforms, organized a major investment conference entitled Invest in Tunisia. He introduced an innovative governance procedure based on a trilogy of vision, strategy, and leadership. And in December of 2014, the first truly free and fair presidential election since 1956 happened in Tunisia, and he is no longer the Prime Minister as of February 6th. It is exactly what many reformers might have dreamed of. Not surprisingly, he's gotten the Tunisian Order of Republic, the German Order of Merit, and the Amadeus Man of the Year distinction from Morocco. Interestingly enough, just in my chatting with him earlier, he talked also about his strategy for how he thought about governing during that period. I hope you'll talk some about that, and if you don't, I will ask you a question or two because it's a fascinating and very uncommon strategy that he proposed. So please join me in welcoming the Honorable Mehdi Jomaa. Former Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Larbi, and the former Minister of Higher Education, Scientific Research, and Information and Communication Technologies, Dr. Jalasi. Let me also thank the Institute of Politics here, as well as the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs, our Sub-Saharan Romani Center for Business and Government, and the Office of the University Marshal for all their work in putting this together. In 2011, when a street merchant set himself afire in January of 2011, a remarkable set of events began to transpire, starting in Tunisia, but quickly spreading across North Africa and other places. We saw a remarkable transformation. Governments began to fall. People were desperately trying and seeking to have revolutions that would result in free elections and the like. But one by one, many of these things have not turned out quite the way the original organizers had hoped. Tunisia seems, though fragile, a bright spot. And it's really fascinating periods. 2013, I'm sorry, 2013. And though his family was in politics, this is something that wouldn't necessarily, I think, have occurred to you, but this was a chance to come back and work for your country. He became Minister of Industry, and he brought together a new energy strategy, an increasing mix of renewable and high value-added industrial policy. He rationalized energy subsidies and culture change and social responsibility in large industrial groups in Tunisia. Then early in 2013, when the country was thrown into crisis, he again was quite involved in putting the pieces together. And in January 2014, after several months of acute political crisis, which stalled the transition process, he was selected by the National Dialogue Committee to become the head of government and to serve as the interim prime minister until the next election. He was charged with completing the transition process with the ultimate objective of organizing the country's first general elections under the new constitution. During his tenure in office, he restructured and enhanced the security apparatus to deal with terrorism. He launched a national economic dialogue to build a national consensus.
Also listed on your program. Thank you. This forum will begin shortly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Ellwood, and I want to welcome you here to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Harvard Kennedy School. This is a really special evening for us tonight because we have with us someone who is here to talk about one of the few bright spots that came from what we once called the Arab Spring, and is in a position to help us think as effectively as anyone can as how we can really make these things, this thing we call democracy, work. Tonight we have with us the Honorable Mehdi Jomaa. I'd like to acknowledge several distinguished guests here in the audience. His Excellency's wife, Hala Jomaa, right here. Understand the story. We'll hear more about this, but it's not that in Tunisia things were always easy or went really well from the start. This was a period when, yes, there were elections, but they were highly contested. Then there was several assassinations of leftist political leaders, and there were very many times, there were calls for a government governed by Sharia law. So there were many times when this experiment felt like it could have gone the same way that some of the others have. But a variety of people came together and began to think about ways to make it really work. Our speaker tonight in 2011 was working in France, as he had been for most of 24 years. He was in the company, the Total Group, where he specialized in aeronautical systems and worked on several programs dealing in defense and aerospace. Yet he was called upon in 2011 or 2012 to be the Minister of Industry. 2012, after several challenges.